Welcome to Beyond the Diploma, where we discuss navigating the university experience in Canada and provide insight and tools for success. I'm Octavian Turner, and I'm an undergraduate chemistry student at the University of British Columbia and a clinical research assistant in the Division of General Surgery at Vancouver General Hospital. Today my guest is Kshemaka Gunawardena. Kshemaka is a senior microbiology and immunology student at the University of British Columbia. In 2022, he worked as a melanoma research assistant at the Lady Davis Institute for Medical Research in Montreal. He's received a publication in the Journal of Clinical Investigation as an author of the paper Peroxisome Disruption Alters Lipid Metabolism and Potentiates Anti-Tumor Response with MAPK-Targeted Therapy in Melanoma. This year, he's worked as a COVID-19 researcher in the UBC Faculty of Medicine, where he employed 3D microscopy to examine how coronavirus infections alter cell morphology and interactions between organelles. Kshemaka is also the design team captain for UBC BIOMOD, which is a club that competes in biomolecular design competitions. He leads a team of 60 students in researching and implementing team project protocols. At the beginning of November, he traveled to Tokyo for a weekend where he competed in the BIOMOD Jamboree. He is currently in the process of applying to Canadian medical schools. Today's discussion covers his experience in the microbiology and immunology program at UBC, his WorkLearn and co-op experience, recommendations for someone who wants to get a publication, his advice for managing time and extracurriculars, and how to get ahead through research. Kshemaka Gunna, welcome.
Thank you. It was fire. It's absolutely perfect.
Thank you for joining us. I'd like to start by asking you which Canadian universities you applied to and why you chose UBC.
Right. I've applied to UBC Medical School. I've applied to most of the schools across Canada, I'd say.
Okay.
The Ontario schools as well. I'm just going to cluster them in one. There's Queen's, U of T. Are you talking about medical schools or just in general?
I should have specified. I meant more undergrad.
Right.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
But for undergrad.
Cool. For undergrad, so
yeah.
UBC, I applied to Sask as well, like University of Saskatchewan.
Okay.
U of T. And yeah, those were my three main ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you end up choosing UBC?
So my first reason for applying to all the schools is because in high school I did the IB program, and my whole reason for doing that was to try and get outside of BC.
Right.
But then once reality hits, it's cheaper to stay in BC, go to UBC.
Yeah.
So I had to turn down the other offers because although they sounded like I could lead a new life, to me staying in BC was the most economic thing. And yeah, I got family here, and it's just all my friends also stayed in BC, went to UBC, so
that's nice.
It's an easy choice.
And I met you, so
yeah,
it worked out. What attracted you to microbiology and immunology?
Right.
Did you always know you wanted to do that?
So I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted something in this field of science because growing up, I think that's been my primary interest. It's just kind of the way my life turned out. In terms of me picking microbio, though, it was a choice between microbiology, CAPS, which is cellular, anatomical, and physiological sciences, which UBC also has, and there's also biochem for a bit as an interest. I ended up picking microbio as my top choice because there are two reasons. One is that its prereq requirements were much less, so they didn't require to do integral math. It was only differential calc that was required. So in terms of me getting in, it was easier. And the other thing was the immunology aspect was really interesting to me. I've been interested in that for a while. So I ended up choosing microbio and I got in. So.
Now this program, is it similar to CAPS in that it's sort of smaller and there's sort of GPA requirements? Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I can't personally speak to what CAPS is like. Okay. But it is smaller for sure. It's not as small as CAPS, which in the honors program, I think there's around 30 students that go there on average. For microbio, it is a smaller cohort, and the GPA requirements, they don't specify exactly what they want, but from the lab courses that are required in your third year, but you need to graduate, there's only a certain number of seats which are available. And so in that case, they look at your grades and they say that they choose the students who have the highest performing, like have the best grades in order to fit them in the lab. Right. But yeah, so there isn't a specific GPA requirement, just in terms of overall academic performance, they look to see if it's good or not.
Right. What do you think's been the biggest challenge in your degree?
In microbio? I think there's a few things. So one is the amount of memorization that comes with immunology in particular. There's a lot of different reactions that happen in your immune system as you respond to viruses, to different bacterial pathogens, and even just the different types of cells in your body. There's a big knowledge gap between going from like a general science background, something that microbiome and immunology wants. And so I think it was hard for me to, learn how to study for those exams and things like that. And apart from that, I'd say getting used to working in the lab more, coming from like first year and going to second year. And at the time, not having lab experience outside of going like chemistry labs, right? You switch into a microbio lab, it's a completely different environment.
Yeah, I agree. In chemistry, at least, the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is the labs.
Yeah.
They're twice a week, 4 hours each.
Yeah.
You got to prep,
Yeah.
and then there's post.
Yeah.
There's 2 credits. So you put more effort into the lab sometimes than some other courses. So it's nice to hear that's not.
Yeah.
It's the same case elsewhere too.
Well, it's similar. I would say though that one of the things that I actually like about the labs is the attitude is very different. So in the chemistry labs that I was in, I found it was very, it's focused on you getting the right results and your things where your experiment's working, how much is your yield, what mass
what's your purity.
For microbiome labs, at the start, because they're really teaching labs, right? So it's the instructors, everyone's really nice, really friendly. It's really nurturing, honestly, because you can take as much time as you need, even though there's a lab time slot. You won't, they give you so much of extra time in that. So it gives you the space to grow and make mistakes, which I really liked. Yeah.
How long are labs typically?
So it's the same thing as with chemistry. It's like 2 to 4 hours once a week. Yeah.
Do you take, in second year early on, do you take a lot of similar labs to biology students? Or they're more specific to microbio?
No, so they're more specific to microbio.
Okay.
I haven't taken any bio labs. Yeah.
Okay. Are there certain focuses within microbiology towards your senior years?
What do you mean by that exactly?
So, for example, in chemistry, there's, analytical, organic. I'm not too familiar with how it works, but can you take certain courses to sort of tailor your interests in fourth year?
For microbio. Yeah, so from what I've seen as a student, there's 2 main ways. One is you can go into bacteria as your main interest. So like looking at how biofilms grow, different types of bacteria that may happen. And then there's also like a more genetic sort of focus, at least with 2 courses that are prereqs for your degree. Apart from that though, there's focus on immunology and the microbio aspect, which is sort of linked to what I said before. And so you can they give you 2 options for courses sometimes. One is which it's more like a virology based focus, and the other is which is like a bacterial.
I see. And you get to choose.
You get to choose, yeah.
That's nice. Could you opt to do both?
I think you could. I just don't think they recommend it because they're equally tough.
Yeah.
So you doing both, they might interfere with the time slot, first of all. Also, it doesn't really add anything, I guess, except it gives you the option of because then in the next year, you'll need to choose courses which have either one of those as the prereq.
I see.
So that opens up one pathway versus another. So
you sort of need to know early on a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not the end of the world even if you don't.
Yeah. What do you like most about your degree?
What I like most about my degree, I think it's what I sort of alluded to before, but the atmosphere in the labs where it's really nurturing. I found I've enjoyed that a lot. It was a big shift in the mentality compared to chemistry labs, which I had in my first year. Apart from that too, I think just in general with any science that's focused around research, it's the freedom that they give us in some courses to explore what we want to do, as long as it's related to the topic. So the lab course I'm taking right now in my final year, the whole point of that is you come up with a project that you're going to eventually write a paper for an undergraduate journal. And so you have a little focus, like for us it's focusing on proteins that will display on the surface of bacteria. But then you can choose what you want to do, and then you have the prof and TAs who will help you develop the project. So that's pretty awesome. Okay. So
you'd say it's sort of the TAs, the professors?
Yeah, the TAs, the professors.
The
environment, yeah.
It's motivating.
It is motivating. The people around, I think with every degree, there's going to be people who will motivate you. There's going to be people who are really competitive too.
Yeah.
I guess it's who you associate with at that point, but yeah.
Have you found that you're doing more projects? 3rd, 4th year, that's preparing you for maybe graduate school?
Yeah, so I'd say in my last year especially, there's more project-based things, less examinable materials, more do this and show us what you know about something. I think that's yeah, as you said, it's more related to grad school. It's what the mindset that they're trying to build to. So taking away from just being able to write a test versus understanding material. Yeah, but in the second year and the third year, it was exams.
It's tough.
They weed you out with the exams. Yeah.
So you've described a bit of the culture.
Yeah.
Would you say most people are interested in med, or they want to pursue some research?
Right.
How would you describe that?
Yeah, so I think it's changed as I've gone through the program. So at the start, I'd say the majority of people were focused on med. Even in first year, that was the case. Most people I knew wanted to go into med. Then as times gone by, people are like, okay, I want to do research instead, because they've gotten the lab experience and they realize that maybe med isn't the best option, or they're more interested in doing something that's more hands-on research-based. So I'd say that shift is being more apparent. There's still a fair amount of people that I know in microbiology who are really interested in pursuing medical school, but that doesn't mean there's still a lot of really intelligent people who are going into research, academia, or industry.
Right.
Yeah.
I think comes with, finding new opportunities and hearing about what other people are doing and be like, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever considered switching your degrees?
I think there have been times, long nights where I've been like, wow, why am I in this major? But overall, I think there's one is if I could go back, I would do a different major. Okay. But in terms of me switching from microbiology to a different major, I haven't considered it seriously. Personally, I think I would end up having a similar interest to any other science major I chose. It would be a different story if I was talking about outside of the sciences, which I haven't really thought about before. So yeah, like long story short, not seriously considered it apart from long nights.
I'm just curious, when you were in high school, were a lot of people in your cohort wanting to go into science? Because that's how I felt, definitely in my high school. Yeah. I think, okay, I don't have the stats, but I want to say more than half wanted to go into science. Yeah. How was it for you?
I think I'd say it's about the same. Okay. A lot of the people that I knew, like obviously take bio courses or chem courses or physics courses, but even then, there was very few people that I saw, at least the people that wanted to go to university, like and do well in university, who wanted to do something that wasn't science related. It was all like STEM, engineering or sciences.
Yeah. Engineer science.
That's it.
So the next section I wanted to talk about was sort of your WorkLearn and co-op. So my first question is about how you had a WorkLearn position in the Weidberg lab at the UBC Life Science Institute. Can you walk us through what WorkLearn is, who's eligible, and how you get a position like that?
So WorkLearn, the whole idea behind the program is that it lets students get the experience of working while also learning. So you take courses, and at the same time, during the school year, you work for 10 hours max a week. During the summer as well, they have WorkLearn where they up the hours to 20, I believe. And so that's how the WorkLearn position I had was during the summer. And yeah, so WorkLearn is not restricted to exclusively to science things. So it's not just labs. Other companies, sometimes they post things, they get it approved through the WorkLearn program, and then it appears on the UBC careers website, which is also how I found my first WorkLearn. Yeah.
So how many courses were you taking?
Yeah,
and what's typical? Yeah,
so because I did it in the summer at the time, so this is the same summer that I was studying for my MCAT. So I would count that as like almost like a normal course load in terms of the material I was studying for. So yeah, but not UBC courses at the time.
So you were taking maybe like one course?
Well, yeah, if you count like studying for the MCAT as a course, yeah.
How did you manage your time?
Yeah.
Like the MCAT and all that?
Yeah, so for me, first of all, the people at my lab, the Weidberg lab, they were really flexible. They really understand. That's one thing that I liked. I don't know if it's universal for all WorkLearn places, but they understand that you're a student. So I was able to talk to them and say, hey, I'm commuting. It's hard for me to be here every day. Can we maybe work like 2 or 3 days where I'm here for 4 or 5 hours? And that way we can get my total hourly range to around 20. But at the same time, I can have like some days where I'm at home and I can save more time that way.
Was there sort of some hybrid aspects to the WorkLearn?
No, so for what I was doing, mostly it was making sure that the lab's inventory was in stock. So they use different sorts of media to grow out yeast cells and sometimes bacterial cells. And my job was to make that media, make sure they weren't running out. And so for that, it was all hands-on at that point, yeah.
Would you recommend this program to other students?
Yeah, for sure. I think it depends on, I'd say apply early with anything. I don't know exactly when they start releasing jobs, but you can I think if you listen to your friends around you, you can get a quick sense of, oh, there are jobs posted out, go and apply. I would definitely recommend it though, because it was the first exposure that I had to a lab setting outside of my first year courses, and I found it to be really useful. Even if you're not in sciences, if you want to do something that's not lab related, I think it'd be useful.
Yeah, I think that first work experience is so important.
Yeah, it gets your foot right in the door.
And it's tough to get.
Yes.
And WorkLearn and Co-op, which we'll get to, is definitely the first step to get that experience. So what was your biggest takeaway? Were there some transferable skills that now you're using in the lab now, or what are some soft skills maybe?
Right. I'm sure like there's going to be a lot that I learned that I won't be able to describe just subconsciously, which probably made me a better person. But from what I could notice, first of all, I learned what a lab is like how different, like the hierarchy almost. There's a PI, you have grad students. So
PI, for those who don't know, is a principal investigator.
Exactly.
And they lead the project.
Yeah. So those words are like really common to me now, but coming into a lab, it's like, what does that mean? A principal investigator is not a private investigator. And then getting that was like, it's a really minor thing, but it's important to know that before going into a lab. Also, you get a good feel of what the work culture is like. So for me, my most positive takeaway from the lab was the really nice work culture that they have there. They really respect all the students. They care for your mental health there. It's a really nice place. And I learned that from talking to the different students there, that if you wanted to find a job in research, one of the things that they considered was not necessarily the subject, but who the principal investigator was and how everyone worked together in the lab, because the atmosphere was really important in a research, at least for academia. And then apart from that, the techniques I learned, so although mostly what I was doing was preparing media, preparing solutions, which also did require some skill, I'm going to say, I did get a chance to see them do their experiments. They helped me just to get me more involved. I helped design something for their experiments and helped do a transformation, which is just another scientific technique. I'm not going to go into that, but so I learned some skills regarding that, how to use pipettes. And those have been really useful now. I mean, I've obviously improved on those skills.
Like micropipettes?
yeah, micropipettes.
With multiple dispensing tips? Or?
Yeah, I've done.
I've never used that, not yet.
No, so yeah, exactly. The first time I saw that at the time, it was really impressive. Oh, an autoclave too, which is like a big oven where you put stuff to get sterilized. So yeah, really all of it was pretty transferable.
You probably got exposed to some things that you wouldn't be exposed to in your normal labs.
Yeah.
Like maybe an autoclave.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you go into a normal lab, I guess like a first year lab you're talking about, or just
even now, first, second year? Like you're not, putting...
True.
You know what I mean?
I completely agree. Because when you go in the lab, everything's already prepared for you.
Yeah. Solutions, everything.
Everything. But in this case, it's, you see from point A to point B, the glassware you're using needs to get sterilized first. I was doing that.
It's tedious work. Someone's got to do it though. It's the WorkLearns.
Yeah.
Were there more than one WorkLearn? More than one WorkLearn sort of in your group?
Yeah. So at the time they were only doing one WorkLearn at a time.
Okay.
And part of the reason that I was able to join the lab is because the previous WorkLearn couldn't stay throughout the summer. So then they reached out to me because I'd sent an email being like, hey, I was just checking in. How's the application? I wanted to know if you'd picked someone. And then they replied to me at the time during the school year, oh, unfortunately, the position's taken. But then they reached out to me during the summer, and then I got in. So, but yeah, just one WorkLearn at the time.
So what's your advice to someone who may not have too many experiences?
Yeah.
How do you apply when you're just starting out?
Yeah, so for me, the way I got connected to the lab in the first place, so there's a I don't know if this is a plug because I'm not related to this club really, but you can cut this out if needed.
It's okay, we'll leave it.
So there's a club called URO at UBC. It's undergraduate research opportunities.
You can sponsor us.
So they have research nights where you get to, you can enter your name into a Google form. I don't know if they still do this. I think they do. And they match you with profs who are looking for students because the profs are connected to this club too. And so I submitted my resume. I was a first year. I had no experiences before, but I was like, whatever, I need to get my foot in the door. So I submitted it, and I had an interview with Dr. Weidberg and a few other profs as well. And then afterwards, you know, I sent a follow-up email to all of them, and she was one of the people that actually responded, because not all profs will respond to your emails. I think that's something you're gonna need to learn to accept at some point. No matter how hard you try, you know, all the cold emailing, which is good. You should email, always reach out, try your best, because someone will respond. But you're gonna have to get used to being left unread or being ignored. And yeah, so it was luck. I attribute like a lot of it to luck as well. I put myself in a position to be lucky, but there was still a lot of luck involved in me actually getting an email from them to work at the lab. And to me, I see that as my starting point for everything else that I've done. So
that's nice. Do you think that this WorkLearn position bolstered your application for co-op positions?
I would hope so. I remember in my interview that I had for my co-op, one of the questions she asked was, oh, describe your previous, you know, you on your resume it says you had a WorkLearn. How was that like? So yeah, that played a significant role in that, because what employers, in my mind, they want to see is not necessarily the grades you have, which is great if you have nothing else to go off of, but that you've had some sort of exposure to the setting that you want to work in. And so if you're going to like a lab doing research, they want to see that. And so the WorkLearn, I think, was really useful for that. Yeah,
there's a lot that isn't learned in the classroom.
No, there's a lot, yeah.
And professionalism too.
Yeah.
And experience like that.
100%.
I know when you're starting off in co-op, they recommend listing some technical projects.
Yeah.
And those, for most students, are labs.
Yeah.
Chemistry labs. They weren't even projects.
No.
It was just 4 hours. And even now, you know, I list a couple projects as I apply for some internships. Because I don't have that first wet lab experience yet.
Yeah.
But getting that WorkLearn or working on other projects just on campus with other people, that's a great thing to include, I think.
100%, yeah.
If you don't mind sharing, how many places did you apply to? How many responses did you get when you were applying to co-op?
Yeah, so for co-op, I applied, I think, to around 20 jobs, which I think it's on the lower end of what I've heard people apply to. It takes quite a bit of applying, from what I've heard, to get a good position in co-op. And so for me, I think, once again, it was a bit random, the position that I ended up getting. So one of the things I was filtering for, so on the co-op board, you can filter for the things you want to see, you want to pick for your jobs. And so you can choose, you know, cover letter. Do they want a cover letter? Do they want, because what takes up the most time with co-op is the cover letters. Yeah. Every company you see on there is like, oh, we need a cover letter. We need a cover letter. And you see the amount of applicants. There's like 50 people applying. You know they're not reading your cover letter, right? But you're still going to try your best. You're going to write in a little, you're going to have a template, but you're going to have to change it so that it's more tailored. And then you apply, and then you do that like 40 more times, and it's really annoying. So with this position that I got, they didn't need a cover letter, which was
that's so funny.
which was nice. So I saw the location. It was in Montreal, Quebec. At the time, I hadn't considered applying outside of BC, but the lack of a cover letter was really incentivizing for me. And then I looked at the project name, right? It was Melanoma Research Assistant. And I was like, that sounds really awesome, you know? Working on cancer research. And so I applied, and then I got an interview for that, and I was waiting to see if I'd get an interview for the other jobs that applied. I didn't. And so then the way it works is you apply, you get an interview, and then you have like a day or two to respond whether you want the job or not. So there's not much time here,
it's
right?
It's like 48 hours.
Exactly, like 48 hours. So I saw it, had the interview. I thought it was really nice. I really liked the principal investigator. It sounded amazing, and then I was actually, oh my God, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna actually end up going to Montreal, and then they gave me the offer, and so I was like, all right,
Let's do it.
let's do it. But I'd say that if not for that event, I'd probably anticipate applying like a lot more later into the cycle. I had friends who would, I think, almost nearing the exam season, they were still applying, and that's when they got positions. So it takes time. It's normal to take time, but at least for the microbio people that I know, everyone ended up getting a position if they were in the program. Yeah.
So this position you held at the Lady Davis Institute for Medical Research, it was only a 4-month co-op.
It was an 8-month co-op.
Oh, it was an 8-month co-op. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you, after you finished that term, did you apply to other positions after? Or so the way co-op works, most students, they'll usually start at the end of their 3rd year in May. Yeah. And then you have 16 months starting in May. Yeah. So it goes all the way through to the following September. Right. I just included some of the requirements of it. But you must have school to complete after your co-op. That's a requirement. So it can't be at the end of your degree. You couldn't finish with co-op. I was going to ask how it works with you, but I think for science in general, you need a cumulative average of 68%.
Probably. That sounds right.
Yeah. So did you do your 8 months sort of starting in the second 4-month term or the third? Right. Or?
So I think it might have been slightly different. I think it varies slightly between different majors. For us, they presented us with 2 options for how you wanted the work term, study term thing to go. So it was, and I think I'm remembering this right, but I started my first term of 3rd year, and then I went on co-op for 8 months. So, and then I came back and did the second term of my 3rd year. And then I would do the first term of my 4th year, and I was supposed to, according to the program, go back and do the rest of if I wanted to get the co-op designation.
Distinction,
yeah, you need to do at least, I believe it's 12, it's 12 or 16. I'm not.
In chemistry, it's 16.
I think it's 16 months too, to get the actual co-op designation. And so that's when I didn't go back to co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important do you think that is for some? They're like, I want this distinction. I might as well go all the way. What do you think about that?
I think it sort of depends on what you want to get into in life after you graduate. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in terms of whether you want to pursue, I'd say, more academia research or industry, it might be important that you have the co-op designation on your diploma. But at the same time, once again, I haven't gone to that stage, but I've heard that it's not that important because no one really cares about what's on your diploma, but they care about the experiences you've had, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way I saw it. The co-op program, obviously, they have like a great reason for existing, and I think it's still a great idea to get your co-op designation. But for me personally, I wanted to pursue medical school after graduating, I didn't see a purpose in extending my undergrad to get an experience when I already felt like I had gained an experience. Right. Yeah.
Some people say that co-op's a privilege and that it's expensive. I guess it really depends on where you get your co-op.
Yeah.
Because you traveled to Montreal, I'm curious how the costs incurred and if you can talk about that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think that's also one of the drawbacks that I had personally with co-op was the co-op term fee, because it's around $700, and that's a lot. I mean, true, you are working, but you're paying to work, and it kind of sucks that for not a lot, but like a significant amount of the money is going to go back to just paying for the position that you got in the first place. In terms of me going to Montreal and living there, I'm lucky because Montreal is pretty cheap to live in. It's a really friendly city in terms of economics.
And for students.
It's great. Like Montreal's McGill students everywhere. All of them are university students. Well, I can't say McGill only. There's a bunch of other universities. I didn't say that.
McGill's downtown too,
it is
right?
downtown. Yeah. So, so the cost of food is pretty cheap. Housing there is really affordable.
Were you in res or off campus?
I was off campus, but even then I would say it's like 5-10 minutes walk from McGill, which is nice because it is, as you said, in downtown. And it's cheap. It's affordable housing. It's because most of those buildings are pretty old, but they're maintained still. And And yeah, so the cost of living there is pretty low. And so as a result, what I did was I wanted to track my spendings and my savings. So I think I was most concerned about money when I was in Montreal, because I was thinking, okay, I got to take out how much money I'm earning. Got the little co-op fee at the side, which I'll subtract right away at the beginning. And I wanted to, I wanted to have a good time, and I also wanted to come back with having earned some money.
Yeah.
But my goal going into it was to get the experience. And I think that really changed how I viewed things, because in my mind, I wasn't working for the money, even though obviously that's the point of getting a job. I was working to get exposure to a lab which did research on cancer, which was awesome to me, right? Yeah.
I agree. I think for us right now and for early undergrads, the money's not going to be good anyways.
Exactly.
The money doesn't matter.
No.
For some, okay, I got to be careful with that.
Yeah.
For some, it may be important.
Yeah.
But bottom line is you're not going to be making too much unless you get like an engineering co-op.
Yeah.
Or comp sci, and I've heard some crazy like six-figure salaries. But at least, in most positions, kind of minimum wage.
Yeah, especially with research,
so
academic
it's challenging.
research. Yeah.
For those who are interested, the co-op course fee is about $700 per 4 months.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a normal school term. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about the cost of one course.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what are the advantages and disadvantages of co-op? So I'll provide one advantage, for example. Yeah. Scope offers a portal where companies can list jobs specifically for undergrad students. If you go onto company sites or you were to look elsewhere on like LinkedIn or Indeed, you're not going to find too many internships specifically for students. But through Scope, there's 100, 200 plus. Yeah. There's a lot of opportunities there. I think that's an advantage.
Yeah.
Is there another advantage you?
I think along with that is that the employers know that a lot of they know the population who's applying are students.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because if it's on LinkedIn, they're looking for professionals, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we can call ourselves professionals at the point when you're applying for your first co-op job.
First experience.
I am a professional. No. So that is a big difference, because it just makes it easier for you to know your employers or the potential employers understand that you're a student. Yeah.
And like we talked about, you had that WorkLearn, which was your sort of first official experience, but co-op gives you that first experience.
Exactly.
And it could give you, so they recommend doing sort of 8 months in one go. A lot of places like that, because you get familiar, you're part of the team. I quote, like, you don't get to know the company too much in 4 months. They kind of talk about that. But in theory, you could get, 4 experiences.
You could, I think.
It's unpopular.
It's unlikely and unpopular.
But at least 2.
Yeah, at least 2. Yeah.
At least 2. Yeah. Some places they'll offer 12 months. Yeah. I haven't seen any 16 months.
I think some places, if you do 12 months, they can offer to extend it to 16 if they like you. Yeah.
And because they've trained you and you're familiar, it's easier for them to do that. Yeah. I think the only disadvantage I listed, I said it was a time commitment outside of your degree. Yeah. But then in brackets I say, however, you could consider it as a part of your degree and an investment in your future.
You honestly could. It also, once again, I think it depends on where you want to go with that co-op, because I think you can get a lot of return offers, especially even if it's like a research lab. They know now that you work well. So afterwards you leave, you want to do masters, and let's say it's at a university, you can always reach out, be like, hey, I'm doing masters. Would you mind if I rejoin the lab? And they'd love you, they'd love to have you back, unless you did something horrible.
Can you describe for us some of the work you did in your co-op placement as a melanoma research assistant?
Yeah, so because I was an undergrad, I was under a PhD student helping him finish his paper, which is how I ended up being listed as one of the authors, which was, once again, this is a big advantage that I felt from co-op, was being listed on a publication. And so in this case, what I was doing mostly was experimental work, like wet lab work. So I'd help run things like Western blots, qPCR. I'm just going to list a bunch of techniques here.
And flow cytometry.
Flow cytometry. There's also a lot of, and what I was doing, because it's skin cells, like skin cancer, there's a lot of cell culturing, which was the first time I'd done that. And so it's really cool. I still find it cool. You got little human cells that are cancerous, and you're just helping them live.
Helping them grow.
Helping them grow.
Spread.
So that you can treat them.
Yeah.
And kill them. But you need to let them grow first. Yeah. Yeah.
Was it intimidating? Like learning those, you're like, oh, this is all new. I don't know where to start.
Yeah. So I think I felt that way for, I think it's just a normal part of the way that I've learned to, when I was going into a new research position, is I'm a bit nervous. You know, there's a bit of imposter syndrome almost. It's like,
why am I here?
Why am I here? You know, they could have picked anyone and I'm here. But I think it's completely normal because they know that you don't know that much and they help guide you through things. And for me, it was just getting over that initial, you know, I don't want to mess up, you know, I don't want to, you know, accidentally do something that's wrong. It's okay to make mistakes.
Break some equipment.
Yeah, no, breaking equipment too. Because
that's real.
In labs, things are expensive.
Yeah.
Because they're funded by grants and the companies that make equipment know that. So they make things pricey. So that was kind of a slight fears that you have, but you know, all of those went away within the first few weeks. Yeah.
So you briefly just mentioned that you were involved in a publication.
Yes.
You're published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation. So was a publication a guarantee of this position?
So when I applied, one of the things they said was, when the project is done, we would be listing you as an author. They obviously can't say what position an author, because authorship is a very picky thing in science because it's one of the few ways that researchers get recognized outside of their lab. And so the order in which you're listed in the publication is kind of the order of importance that you have.
It's a contributor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, I'm an undergrad student. They couldn't tell me what order I'd be in, but they're like, you could be on the paper. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I didn't even know that was an option for me.
You're a fourth author.
Yeah, so I ended up being fourth author after working there for 8 months. And yeah, I couldn't be more grateful. Like, I think, you know, they gave a really good platform for learning. And yeah, I saw the whole process because I came in nearing the end of the project. I was able to see kind of, you know, how journals are submitted. I didn't see the full end of the revision process because that takes a really long time, but I saw everything that went into putting together a paper. It was really good. Yeah.
So I was going to ask, I don't know if this is the best approach, but, you know, if you wanted to get a publication,
yes,
you could be strategic and try to find projects that are nearing sort of manuscript development.
You could, yeah.
That's kind of sneaky.
You could. Yeah.
But what would your advice be to that? Like, what do you
for people who want to publish a paper or something, or like they want to get publication?
Well, I don't think going about it is like saying, I want a publication.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the wrong intention.
Yeah.
I think you need to explore your interest. Now,
exactly.
I don't have a publication yet, but I think you need to explore your interest, and I think it'll eventually come with
100%
the experience.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, because for me, now once again, I didn't know about this publication thing when before I applied for interest for this subject matter. And then I found out in the interview that, oh, that was an option.
Bit of luck.
A bit of luck once again. So...
But how'd you set yourself up? You did co-op.
I did co-op. Yeah, but I agree though. It's about finding your interest. I know it's a bit stereotypical, a bit cliche to say that, you know, follow what interests you. But if you do follow the region of science you're interested in, or whatever the heck it is that you're interested in, if you want if you're hoping to get a publication, you know, talk to people. Communication is key in science and anywhere. You want to, if you get a co-op position, if you get a WorkLearn position, talk to your manager, talk to the people around them, find out what they do, because that's most likely going to open up doors in the future that you can't even foresee. And that's really important. Yeah.
When you were at McGill and you were living off campus, what was it like making friends, meeting people? Yeah.
So for me, the place that I chose was through Facebook Marketplace, and I had roommates who I'd never met before.
How many roommates?
I had 5 roommates.
5 roommates?
It was a house. Like, it was like...
Were they all guys or some girls?
They were all girls. But...
That's interesting you got that. Because sometimes they're like, you know, we're 4 or 5 girls, we just want a girl.
Yeah, but in this case, like, I didn't know, once again, I didn't know what I was getting into before I actually...
You didn't.
I just wanted a place to stay, right? And this was for the first 4 months, and then after 4 months, I found a different place. But it was really awesome because they were all international students, so I learned a lot about what they felt like being in Montreal and like Canada. It was interesting being a representative, like being the only Canadian in the household.
You said that pretty Canadian-like.
Because they were like, oh, what do Canadians like to do? And I'm like, wow, you're asking me. I feel honored.
Quebec's the place to be for that, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, so that helped me gain a lot of friends because first of all, there was 5 other friends right there, and then they made friends with their classes. I got to be friends with the friends of their friends,
yeah. And
then I also met who would be my roommate afterwards. I met him through one of their friends, and so that allowed me in my last 4 months of co-op to meet more people, and I think that really helped with the social part because otherwise I think it would have been a bit tougher, especially in Montreal, whereas you got not mostly, but there's French is a predominant language there.
Do you speak French?
I do speak French.
French immersion?
No, not French immersion.
Duolingo?
No, not Duolingo.
Not sponsored.
Duolingo for sure, but it's not primarily, just through high school French. And I was able to, reading and writing French is good for me. Speaking, the only issue is I don't have the accent. And I will not be demonstrating for you.
That was my next question. Let's get a demonstration.
So whenever I tried talking French, they just talk to me in English.
So you're concerned about the accent, not the vocab?
No, not the vocab. It was the accent. Right now, I might be a bit rusty on the vocab because it's been a while. But at the time, I'd say I was decent. Like if I had the accent, I'd call myself almost proficient.
Okay.
Almost.
When I was in Paris this summer, playing basketball.
Yeah.
And I'm fluent in French, but I haven't spoken for a long time. So the vocab's kind of like, it's going down.
Yeah.
So I understood what they're saying. They're kind of like roasting us. They're like, they're beating us, and they don't even speak French.
Yeah.
Or I ordered in French, and the guy, she responded in English. And I was like, oh my God.
That's brutal. Also, there's a difference between like the French and Quebec and
of course
in France. So for
Let's
me,
make that clear.
That's a big difference.
But
yeah.
I probably have a similar experience in Quebec.
I don't know. I feel like
Maybe?
I think you'd be fine. I think you'd be fine. Just give it a shot.
Next podcast, it'll be all in French.
Yeah, all in French.
It's a challenge. So the next section I wanted to go to was managing time and extracurriculars, because you're very busy. Like most degrees, I can imagine microbiome and immunology is very demanding.
Yeah.
What have you found works for you in terms of managing your time and schedule?
Right.
And do you plan your study sessions in advance?
Yeah.
When do you like to study?
Yeah. So I think I've gone through a few phases of, figuring how to do this. I think as with everyone, first year was me trying to figure out how to study again, because it is different from high school. And so I went through like different things, in terms of how I wanted to plan my days. I found personally that being too strict with how I have my day set up actually prevents me from being effective in terms of my time management. Lately I found that making to-do lists is nice for me. Like I list what I want to do in the day, and I try to make it as realistic as possible, because there's an urge when you're making to-do lists, like I want to be really efficient today. So I'm going to do everything. Like I'm going to do this course, that course, go for a run here, go to the gym, and come back and do this other course.
I'm going to eat. I'm going to buy groceries.
Yeah, so I think like from my second to fourth year, it was learning actually how to make my goals more realistic, because there were times when, as you said, it's tough, especially commuting. The journey adds on time. You feel like, I'm losing time here. And it's hard to stay focused too. You feel tired. So it's been like a journey of me learning to accept how I'm feeling at the moment in terms of when I want to study, and like balancing between being, spontaneous in terms of how I want the day to be and planning ahead. So I actually don't recommend this for people, but my calendars don't have anything on. Like I don't put appointments on my calendars. I would recommend that you put things on your calendar. I don't do that. But, and so I don't know if this has helped me. Mentally it helps me because it makes me feel like I don't have that many things going on in my life. And so every day though, as I go about it, I want to list what I want to do. I sort of know what I need to do. I'm going to go about doing it. And then making sure I leave time for myself. I try. It's hard. Some days, it's just, you got to do work all day and then accept that you go to sleep and wake up early and feel kind of garbage the next day. You got to accept that, because no matter what I say, you will procrastinate. No matter what I say, I will always procrastinate. It's just There's freedom in procrastination it's really hard to control. So try controlling it, but at the end of the day, just learn to live with what you have and then try and work around it. Really vague advice.
Well, I called you yesterday just to prep.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing? You're like, some work I should have done during reading break.
Yep.
What was sort of a study strategy you brought into university and you quickly found was just not transferable?
Yeah, so I found that, and this was surprising to me because I thought I was studying right in high school. I'd been memorizing things without understanding them first for a lot of my grade 11 and grade 12 years, because I just wanted to put things that on the exam markers would want to see, right? So I was actually memorizing like key points, things like that. This was especially for bio, without understanding what that really meant. And so when I came in the first year, I go into like chemistry, right? And for the first time, I find myself actually like following along and understanding things. And then I realized that me memorizing is not that important. It's more of me obviously I needed to memorize things, which I learned in my second year, but the understanding part was crucial. It's not just like rote memorization, although it's going to be important. Memorization is going to be important no matter what. Building the understanding, no matter how long it takes, like you take the time to make sure you understand the concept first, and then you can worry about recalling it later.
Yeah. I don't know if we can say like understanding and meaning are the same, but I would say like understand and then identify the meaning, why it's important. Yeah. And then after that, I think the memorization sometimes will come with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to assign the importance to you and why it's important to you.
100%.
And why you need to remember it, which is easier said than done.
Always.
How are you with writing notes? A lot of people, even now, senior year, I see them, they'll be just writing their notes and then they regurgitate and just recopy or something like that.
I think, it depends on the personal preference for different people. For me, like as I talked about me learning that understanding is more important, I found that when I was trying to take notes, I wasn't really understanding what was being said. And even after I'd go back and read the notes, in some cases it would help things solidify, but in most cases I found that I couldn't remember what those notes were referring to. So, and a part of it is also your attention span. I think you got to develop that attention span first in order to be able to just pay attention without writing things down and getting distracted by like your phone or what your friend beside you is talking about. So I'd say from second year onwards, I transitioned to more just listening. In lecture.
Are you taking notes in lecture?
No. So I would only write down things if the prof was like, okay, this isn't on the slides, but you should know this. Then I was like, okay.
That's your cue.
So like you pull out my laptop, right on there, like, all right, know this. and yeah, I found that it's helped me. And once again, though, I don't say it applies to everyone. I know there are people who are really good at note taking. They know how to pay attention while writing things, and it helps them learn. It helps them find meaning in what they're learning. For me, though, I wanted to give my full attention to what's being said so that I can try and understand it.
What do you have to say to those who, like, oh, lectures are recorded, I just stay home?
Yeah.
Talk about, like, the benefits of going to lecture.
Yeah.
First of all, the social interaction, but the benefit of that, and then the disadvantage.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start with, I'll start with the benefits of going to lecture. So as you said, the social interaction is key. You can't really make friends through Zoom, especially if it's recorded, in which case there's no point at all.
I tried during COVID, during my first year.
You had the camera on the entire time.
Yeah, camera's on, and then you just hop in, send somebody a private message. Like, what's your snap? This first year of IG.
Yeah, no, I bet. Yeah.
But I made a few friends because people were desperate. 100%, but like, I wouldn't recommend that. Yeah. It comes off a little too.
Yeah, I think first year too, because I think for you it's different because you had COVID coming in, and that was like, how else are you gonna get to know people? I think it's completely understandable. But like in the last few years where it's hybrid classes where you can do online or in person, I would recommend, no matter what, the in-person experience is different because to me, you're more likely to pay attention, first of all. And your brain also knows that you're there in the room and someone is talking to you. It's not like it's on a screen where you can,
tune out,
turn it off. Or like literally turn around. No one's going to care.
You can't mute the prof.
Yeah, you can't mute the prof. And that plays a big role in terms of your attention, at least for me. So that's one of the biggest benefits in terms of that. It increases your engagement, increases your social interaction.
You can ask questions live.
You can ask questions live, big thing. And
I said this in my last podcast, but now in senior year, it's like, I got questions and I'm going to ask them because I'm busy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like I would be in biochem with my friend.
Yeah.
We're third year, but we're in a second year class.
Yeah.
We're sitting at the back.
Yeah.
And huge lecture.
Yeah.
Right? That was kind of obnoxious. We probably should have sat closer.
Yeah.
But we got to travel across campus,
Yeah.
the seating.
Yeah.
So we'd be asking questions. I'd be like talking like pretty loud and asking questions. Yeah. It just saves so much time.
Yeah.
And you get a good answer.
Exactly. Straight from the source.
And most people probably have similar questions, so don't be afraid to ask.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, the benefit to online lectures, though, is that when they're hybrid at least, you can go back and rewatch 100%. Lectures that were a little bit more...
yeah, I think we know what you're talking about.
Detailed, complicated, stuff like that. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. And I think... You know what? When I stopped taking notes, what definitely helped me was the recorded lectures. So at the time, it was they were all hybrid. Now it's different because profs are not doing any recorded lectures, at least for the classes I'm in. But yeah, back then, so if I did somehow, zone out during class, I knew that I could go back to the exact spot where I was confused and then see it again. So huge benefit. I wish it was like that for all classes where you had the recorded lecture as an option. But I mean, I understand the logistics of that. It's not exactly easy. Yeah.
What are some studying techniques you've picked up that have helped you through microbio?
Right.
Besides not using a calendar, not taking notes.
I've given you like the opposite of advice.
Well, it's interesting. We need these perspectives. So what do you like to do?
So I think you've heard about this one before, but a bit of spaced repetition.
Mr. Anki.
Mr. Anki. So a lot of people will hear about this from people who want to get into medical schools or studying for the MCAT, is Anki. So it's a flashcard app where it's probably been talked about before, but you can it's like a normal flashcard app. You can put all your information on there and it will show you things based on how easy you find them to be recalled. And then it'll space it out over a period of days or hours and then bring it back to you and then show it to you again. So Anki is something I got into after studying for the MCAT.
I like how it's like a commitment. Like I got into this.
No, yeah,
it is a commitment.
It kind of is, yeah. Especially if you were an iOS user, you had to pay for it. I was an Android user.
It was like $40.
Exactly. So at that point, you're in.
Maybe we'll have a link in the future
maybe,
for a discount.
Maybe,
we'll see.
Maybe if they sponsor you. But apart from Anki, I think it's a shift in how I think about learning. For me, realizing that not being able to remember something isn't like a reason to the more difficult you find something to recall, the more likely it will stick in your brain when you actually learn to remember it again. So that was a bit convoluted, but essentially when I went about memorizing things or learning things in my first year, second year, it was like, okay, I memorize it, I go back to it, I still remember it, I go back to it, again, I still remember it. And so for me, the reassurance was, oh, I still know this, I haven't forgotten it. But now I almost want to forget it so that I have to reread it and then rememorize it, but now it will stick for much longer. More arduous, more annoying, but if you combine that with Anki, which already does that for you, it's more beneficial. And and then I think time management is huge. Just, start things early.
I don't know if you should answer that with your calendar comment, but start early.
Yeah.
Do you like to... Some people will wake up early.
Yeah.
I tried that a couple times. It's tough.
It's tough.
But are you more of somebody who studies late?
So I am not a morning person. I have also tried the morning rise and grind. Yeah. It's tough.
Even with the Timmy Hoes, like Tim Hortons.
Tough. No, it's tough because you got to make sure the night before you slept early enough.
Yeah.
And there's almost this thing where you sleep early and you wake up early, even if you get 8 hours. Like for me, I found I was still tired because it's only like 6 in the morning. I'm supposed to be asleep. And so I'd sleep in. So I get really great sleep, but I'd wake up at a normal time. And I think personally, everyone has different, I can't remember the exact term, but you're a night owl, you're a morning person.
Circadian rhythm?
Chrono something. Yeah, circadian rhythm, yeah. I don't want to endorse anything that's not found in science. But yeah, so for me, I found that I'm more of a nighttime evening person. And so tailoring how I study to that has been important. So I'm not even going to bother trying to force myself to study in the morning. I'd rather get other things done, like, you know, eating food like a healthy person, eating a breakfast, getting a good enough sleep when I can, and then knowing that when I'll be active is in the evening, saving, like blocking out that time in my head, not on my calendar.
On your notepad, right?
Sure.
Your to-do list coming up. Gonna give us something.
Yeah, on my to-do list.
Yeah.
From blocking out, like knowing that this is gonna happen in the evening, and then just starting it. Because for me, I found that it's almost like a chemical reaction. You need an activation energy to get started on the thing. Yeah. So you got to put in the effort at the
What's
beginning.
your activation energy? How high is it?
It depends on the thing that I'm doing.
The task.
But I'd say once I've fully, like, I've come to terms with the fact that I am doing this thing, I need to get it done, it flows well. So getting into the flow state is important in that sense. And once again, just knowing how you study and not trying to deviate too much from it. Because in my opinion, it's harder to completely shift what you're doing. And it might even be less effective than if you come to terms with what your habits are, and then you try and modify them slightly so that they work out better.
I think there's a pretty big misconception that's spread quite a bit, that people who, you know, will work late and sleep in, maybe lazy or something like that, or people that wake up are more productive. Yeah. And for some people, when they wake up early, they'll make a point of telling you, I woke up early, oh, I've already been in the library, stuff like this. Okay. Like, you know, go for it. I think you have to find what works for you, like you said. Recently, I've been trying to wake up earlier, but it's a challenge. And I think I'm more just the way my body works. I like to study late. And that's perfectly fine. As long as you're doing it in a healthy way. You're not going to bed at 3 a.m. or something like that.
And then waking up at like 8. Like, that's not going to help you.
And it doesn't really work when you have classes at 9.
No, it doesn't.
So if you want to, you know, go to your class at 9 and you want to work late, latest, maybe you're going to bed at 1. 1:30.
Yeah, 1:30.
But pushing it, I have another question. There's 2 things I want to touch on.
Yes.
Okay, quickly. Do you like to drink coffee or energy drinks?
So I actually don't take any caffeine. It's not like I don't like caffeine.
You say take.
So caffeine is a drug, but
well, it is.
It is a drug, but I don't, because I don't feel the need to. It's not. I love coffee. Like, I like the taste of coffee.
Yeah.
So sometimes I use it to my advantage. Where if it's like, I know I'm going to be pulling like a really long day, a lot of tough work, where I'll take coffee then, or I'll have coffee then, so that I know the caffeine will affect me more, because you can get desensitized to caffeine the more you
build up a tolerance.
Build up a tolerance, So I don't drink coffee. I don't energy drinks too. I stay away from in general, just because of the large amounts of caffeine in there. But for some people, that's, you know, a lot of people actually, the morning coffee is essential to getting started. And I think, though, they get normalized to the point where it's not even that they need the coffee to get energized. They need the coffee to be alive at that point. And it's
like a ritual.
Yeah.
I didn't really know the whole space about energy drinks. And then first year, you know, during COVID, I sort of found out about it. These people are staying up late. And I only knew about coffee. So I've tried quite a few energy drinks. And I have to say, coffee is the single thing that really, like... It keeps you going. I don't know, like, caffeine has a very long half-life. It doesn't matter what drink you're consuming, it's going to be the same. But I've just found, I don't know, there's something in coffee.
I think it's the taste.
The taste.
The smell.
It works better than some other energy drinks. I don't know. Something we didn't touch on, but I think it's important to say is, when you're figuring out study techniques, it's a very personal experience. And some courses require different study techniques.
100%.
So, for example, in math and chemistry, physics, it's a very sort of problem-based approach to learning. There's problem sets, there's question banks online. Some other courses, like more biology, physiology, immunology, where there's a lot of concepts and terms, using Anki is more efficient. Are there sort of database questions I mean, databases with questions, or do they provide problem sets in microbio to help with learning concepts?
Right. I'd say for most of the microbio courses I've taken, they'll give you questions at the end of chapters.
In textbooks, or these supplement, or
as of recent, I think a lot of profs are stepping away from having students buy textbooks for classes. They give you, either they'll upload a PDF version of different chapters, or they'll give you just supplemental readings for it. And in this case, yeah, so from what I've experienced, you get questions either at the end of chapter sometimes, which once again go over what the chapter was talking about to make sure you were paying attention, or you get sometimes the quizzes aren't for marks, which is, I like it when they aren't for marks, because then it's like, you know, risk-free. You just get in there, see what you know. And so no data, like no problem bank places, like there isn't a data set where you can see a list of questions for it, but there will be standardized questions for each student that you can see for chapters and for lectures sometimes. And
do they post midterms? Previous midterms leading up to it?
I'd say most do not. They'll post a practice midterm, which is something that the teaching team has created at the time, but they just tend to stay away from past midterms because I think, like most classes, they just don't want to use things that have been done in the past, just in case a question reappears. And then another student,
because they often do.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much that they can change, I guess, profs, because most of them are doing lab stuff. They're just balancing it on the side. So they keep the test pretty standardized that way. You know. Yeah.
So we're going to transition now to your extracurriculars.
Okay.
I wanted to try something new with you. I want to break down your full timeline of extracurriculars.
Okay.
So you're just listening. This is more for the audience, but I'll just break this down. So you started in September 2019, right?
Yeah.
So this is your first year.
Yeah.
You volunteered at the Vancouver Virology Center as an HIV outreach assistant, similar to our previous guest, Bertie Lyons. You also volunteered at BC Children's Hospital in their gift shop as a sales associate. Second year, now September 2020, you changed volunteer positions at BC Children's Hospital, and you worked as a sales associate at their still fabulous thrift shop. You also worked as a response volunteer at VCH COVID vaccination clinics, and you joined UBC BIOMOD, which is the design team. Then COVID peaked between sort of second and third year, if that's right. Now third year, September 2020, you continued as a response volunteer in VCH COVID vaccination clinics. You did your co-op at Lady Davis Institute for Medical Research in Montreal. You continued with BIOMOD, and you joined SEDS, which stands for Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, which is a non-profit organization for conveying and showcasing developments made in the current aerospace projects. Fourth year, September 2022, you got a job as an operations staff for UBC Rec. You continued with BIOMOD and SEDS, and you were contracted full-time by UBC Multidisciplinary Research Program in Medicine, where you investigated coronavirus infections and how they alter cell morphology and interactions between organelles. So my first question.
Yes.
Looking back on all these experiences, do you feel that it was a natural progression, or do you feel you made great efforts to gather these experiences and opportunities?
I think it's pretty natural in terms of, once again, what I exposed myself to at the time or tried to. So, for instance, I can talk about first the research related extracurriculars. So with me starting with my WorkLearn, that led me to get my co-op, which then led me to get into the multidisciplinary medicine program, which you mentioned, which was for the summer. And so I think there the progression is pretty natural. In terms of my other extracurriculars, BIOMOD was something that I was interested in before in my first year, like the whole idea of the design team. And then I applied, and I just progressed naturally through that as well. And in terms of everything else, it's been mostly interest driven. So for me, joining SEDS, now it's kind of, if you look at it from an outside perspective, I'd say it's a bit of a tangent compared to everything else I'd done, because, you see, okay, there's medical related stuff, research related stuff, and then all of a sudden there's space. So I think for that, it's because as a kid, I really liked space. I'm sure most kids also like space, but for me, getting the opportunity to then now join a team, which I didn't know existed until this point where I applied, and I became a science communicator for them. That was really, really awesome for me. And I think the progression there, I would say it's a bit sudden. It didn't really link to anything else I did. But for me, it felt natural. It just felt like I was now beginning to explore things that were more outside of this typical science student, like microbio student field, and now looking into things that I like doing. So yeah, I think it just all built up gradually over time.
I think you make a good point in saying that, you know, explore those interests.
Yeah.
Because there's clubs, there's so many things you can do. And that's the opportunity. Because, yeah, that's great. I want to talk about your BIOMOD competition, though.
Yes.
In early November, you traveled with a group to Tokyo Institute of Technology for a competition.
Yeah.
Can you share what that was like? Was that your first time visiting Japan?
Yeah, so that was my first time visiting Japan. That was the first time I'd gone with my team to compete for BIOMOD, because COVID kind of... So the way I'm going to, I guess, describe briefly the design teams, how they work. So every design team at UBC, every engineering design team, they compete at some sort of competition. So UBC Rocket has their competitions. There's Kshemaka. You got all these different engineering teams. And then there's BIOMOD, which is a biology-focused design team. And so we were also competing annually at different competitions. But when COVID happened, the BIOMOD organization, which is like the parent group for all the competitions, they went on like a temporary pause, and so this last competition in Japan was the first time they brought back the BIOMOD competition. It's called the BIOMOD Jamboree, and so it was my first time doing that after being on the team for almost 3 years, and that was really special for me because I got to bring now a whole bunch of new students, not new students, but students who hadn't been on the team and I joined, but who I've seen grown as people and as researchers, bring them to Japan and then show them, you know, what the experience of traveling for a conference is like. Because I think that's a privilege that's often restricted to, you know, people who are doing research in labs or grad students. And for me, I'd never been to Japan. I think it was awesome, like being able to go to Japan. I definitely didn't have as much time as I wish I had to do things, because the competition was a week before our reading break. So on that weekend, I could only stay for the weekend, and then I'd come back and then write a midterm later on in the week. But yeah, the experience was great. I got to meet a lot of different people, because it's an international competition where students from across the world come in. And so I got to meet them, see what they do, got to like present. Like, I haven't done any of this before for BIOMOD, so it was really special. Yeah.
Wow. That's so impressive. Like, I think everyone should try to find an opportunity like that where they can travel and do something like that. Yeah. It's not out of reach.
No, it's not.
You know? Yeah. What's your advice for someone who looks at all your experiences and maybe is a little intimidated and they're like, I don't know where to start?
Yeah. I think, first of all, do not overinflate. like look at, like, you see, like you're talking about me, you see what I've done, but in your mind, don't overestimate what I've done, and don't underestimate yourself, because a lot of it, if you just try a bit at the start, and you got to trust that eventually you'll get to the point that you want to be at, and that you'll end up being exposed to different people and different opportunities where you can then grow your experiences. So I think it also, a big factor is time. If you're in your first year, second year, actually no matter what year you're in, and let's say you don't have a lot of things, just start somewhere. I think my starting point was my WorkLearn for a lot of things. I started with that, and then I sort of use that as a platform to propel myself to different opportunities, which I thought were linked in some way. I'm not going to deny the place of luck. I think any person that has some things going well for them had luck on their side to an extent, but at the same time, don't also pretend like you can't do anything about it. Try your best to reach out to people. Try your best to get outside of your comfort zone a bit. Even emailing people, like, that's tough it was tough for me just to cold email, because it felt wrong. It was like, I don't really know this prof, but here I am now emailing a bunch of things about their work, which I just found out about yesterday.
Or the same day.
Or the same day.
Or you felt super motivated.
Yeah, I absolutely love his work, but But yeah, you got to do what's necessary sometimes to just put yourself out there, and just know that I think even if it depends, you know, someone will look at what I do and be like, that's impressive, and then someone else I know will be like, wow, that's like half the stuff that I've done, because they've done a bunch of other things, and that's just the way it is. You know, you got to be happy with what you've gotten done. You got to be proud of what you've done. Motivational words.
Yeah. We could end right there. But my last question to you is, if there's one thing you could tell your first year self, what would it be?
I would tell myself to not worry about research that much. As a first year science student, a lot of the things that I heard from the people around me was, wow, how do I get research experience? How do I get a wet lab position? It's so competitive out there. Getting a job, getting a co-op even is hard. And so I felt a lot of pressure at the time where, you know, if I wasn't trying to get a research related job, you know, what was I doing? And at the time when I was in first year, I was working as a cashier for Shoppers Drug Mart, like a part-time job, you know, like just an average university student. And so I was hearing all these things, and it was making me feel like a bit anxious, a bit worried about, you know, if I could even get into microbio. And I'd tell myself to just, you know, take it easy, like mentally, you know, knowing that depending on, again, on what program you choose, but most likely if you choose something that is science related, and you will end up eventually coming across opportunities quite naturally, which will allow you to then get your foot into the field of research. So in some could just be patient, you know, just be patient. Your time will come when it does come. Try your best to improve how that flows along, but at the end of the day, you know, it's going to be okay. Just let it happen.
Enjoy your journey.
Enjoy the journey and let it happen. Yeah.
Well, I think that's everything. I want to thank you for your joining us today and sharing your experiences, and good luck with your medical school applications.
Thank you. It's been an honor.